3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Good evening. It's Monday again already. Where has that week gone? Welcome along to Reading the Signs with me, Comedy John Ryan, and my pals from the world of comedy, showbiz, entertainment, and anywhere else I can find them, really. Every week we talk about mental health, mental wellness, what we do, why we do it, how we deal with the good times, the bad times. We want you to help as well. Let us have your top tips for well-being. Let us know you're there by putting comments in the box. Do give us a like on YouTube, SoundCloud, Facebook. Just tell your friends, really. And subscribe, of course. Very important that you subscribe at this day and age. Quick mention to Lost Boys UK for this fantastic theme tune. Have a look at my website, happytohelpyou.com. We've got great guests. We've got a great show. We've got a great audience. Let's get to it. Ta-da! Good evening. Welcome to this week's slightly creepy show in the darkened room. My name is John Ryan. Welcome on to Reading the Signs here on Men's Radio Station, Dulux Radio, Women's Radio Station, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, SoundCloud, wherever else you're listening to us. Just thanks for coming along. How's your day been? Let me know that you're there. Put some comments in the boxes on the social media outlet that you're using. It's been a great day for me today because it's been raining, and as I start with every week, well-being and wellness, it's just like the weather. It may be hot and sunny, it may be cold and rainy. It's how you interpret it. So for me today has been perfect because it's been a bit drizzly and a little bit grey, and that's just the way I like it. But maybe you don't. So how's your week been? What you've been up to? Do let us know. Like I say, put your comments in the box or just drop us a little hello and let us know what's going on in your world, in your life, wherever you are. I've been at Pride in Manchester this weekend, and I'm still up here now. Absolutely fantastic, absolutely brilliant. And from a male point of view, sorry girls if this sounds a bit sexist, it's been just brilliant to just be around a load of men who just want to dance, have fun, and party. We were in a nightclub last night, the night before, until 4 or 5 in the morning. Not even the slightest hint of trouble. So one of the things I want us to think about is, what is it about men that makes us so violent? Is it possible for guys to come together without wanting to punch each other's face in? The nearest I got to any sort of hostility whatsoever the whole weekend was when a couple of young straight guys started staring each other out. And I just remember looking at them thinking, just what's going on, boys? What is going on with men in the world? Anyhow, there's nothing wrong with having a bit of fun, and there's nothing wrong with having a little bit of mischief. Quick shout out to Barry Allen. Thanks for coming along, Barry. Let us know what you've been up to this week, mate. What you've been up to today. What's going on in your world. Do let us know. Those of you who listen every week and who tune into the podcast and stuff will know that each week I've got really interesting guests. And this week, here's a real treat for me because I think this man's just hilarious. I've known him for about 20 years. He's a great comic. He's an even better promoter. I was bigging him up on radio this week as one of the few sort of promoters who actually wants people to earn and develop. He's not tight with his pay, and he'll give guys 2 or 3 nights so they can get a little bit of money together and have a little run. He doesn't seem to mind people doing other gigs, which is very rare for promoters in this day and age. He really is quite an exceptional guy. He just made dinner for the kids. Quick hello to Robert Van Buren. I'm in a different place, Rob. You're right. I'm in Manchester. Been up here for Pride, so I'm at my mate's house. So we're doing that. So without further ado, let's just give a big, proper welcome and a proper hello to Mr. Alan Anderrson. How you doing, big man? That was a good intro.
I'm doing very well, and I'm actually very, very jealous that you were down on my favourite street in the entire world during the week, Canal Street. Yeah. I studied in Manchester in the mid-90s, and I was actually the first straight man to work behind the bar in Manto on Canal Street, which was the first. It was the first of the style bars of Canal Street. It's where they filmed Queer as Folk, the Russell Davies thing on Channel 4 all those years ago. So I've had many a night out at Pride at the end of August. In fact, many a night on Canal Street till 4, 5, 6 in the morning. And you're right. It's just a different vibe there. And particularly 95, 96 through till 99 when I worked there, it was one of the most fun and safest places to go. I mean, the reason I went to Manchester was to go to the Hacienda, and it was 98 when it shut down because of all the gang issues there. And Canal Street was an incredibly safe place to go before 98, but suddenly in the summer of 99, that's when fag hags, for want of a better word, and gang culture and things like that kind of slowly crept its way onto the street. But fortunately, it's nothing like that now. But yeah, glad you had a good weekend.
Yeah, no, absolutely brilliant weekend, and nice people. And I've got to be honest, mate. You're from up in Glasgow. We're not shy of retiring violence by any means, but for some reason, you get into a gay club or gay nightclub, and the vibe is different. They're men, they're just as macho and strong as a straight man. So what is it that stops everyone to beat lumps out of each other? I just don't understand.
Right. How politically correct are we going to stay here? There's two things to it.
You can, just make your feelings very clear, mate. You're not on here for your shyness. Although you're not on here at all at the moment because you seem to have gone. Let's have a quickly shout out while we're waiting for Alan to sort his kit out. Little hello from Mike, smashing the grave. Hope you're doing well, mate. Hope things are on the mend for you there, bruv. So Alan kind of dips in, dips out. You're just going to explain to me why.
Sorry about that. I think that there's two reasons to that. Number one is that there's a happier drug scene in gay nightclubs than there are in your straight cattle markets, and when they're out there, they're out there not to fight. They're out there to create relationships, be that for 6 months, a month, a night, whatever. So it's a much tighter community because there are fewer gay venues that they go to, but they go there loyally and all the time. So they know each other. They're friends. They're friends of friends of friends. They've all been through the same thing together. So I think that's why it is probably.
Yeah, it's interesting for me though that there was quite a few straight guys in the clubs, and it just the only time it came close to being hostile was with these young straight lads who were staring each other out, and I just wanted to go and bang their heads together. But then, I'm just way beyond it now. I just don't understand why we have this need for this kind of toxic masculinity.
Sorry, I don't know either. Sorry.
So let's get back to it. Where are you in your pecking order? Where are you in the family, mate? Where are your brothers, sisters? What are you?
I am one of two. I've got an elder brother. He is 7 years older than me.
Does that mean then as a kid, did you look up to him or you know of him?
Oh, 100%, yeah. My dad passed away when I was 7.5, 8. And that was through suicide. And so my brother at the time was 14, 15. So he was the father figure in my life. He was the one that I looked up to. He was incredibly, he was cool. He was big. He was strong. He was fast. He was always doing stuff. He was the athlete. So that I always looked up to him until probably got to be about 30, and then as he was plateauing, I was then on the up.
Yeah. I could see that. Man, that's very nice of you to say about your dad. Thanks for that. I don't need to be uncomfortable with anything that you say. So then, how old were you when your dad passed away?
7 turning 8. I can't mind exactly which it was.
Then does that mean that without that male role model, are you aware of any kind of difficulties that may have had as a child, or were you kind of?
Oh yeah. I was a whiny little crybaby as a kid. Yeah. There's no the yeah. I was the last to get picked for everything. I was small. I mean, I was physically small. It wasn't until I was in fifth year that suddenly, boom, I shot up. So yeah, I was the nerdy wee dweeb at school, and I was a tiny wee thing. But did I miss a father figure? Probably I did, but my mother probably overcompensated for that as a disciplinarian.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Did you like school? Were you happy at school?
I bloody loved it. After fourth year, all the wee Neds who bullied me disappeared off. They left school in fifth and sixth year. It was like big fish, small pond.
So what age would that? What age would you have been then?
The 15 going on 16 mark.
So up until then, didn't enjoy school, and then you started enjoying it.
And right, I enjoyed school. Right, I was a clever little shite. Let's not. I was academically smart. I was never into football. It just wasn't a thing in my family. It was rugby and skiing and cycling. So I was always a bit of an outsider, and that I wasn't playing football in the playground, things like I was doing other stuff. I liked my drama. But it was the odd sports that I did, which was the rugby and the skiing. But both of those set me up brilliantly in my later teenage years, going into my 20s. And rugby was just the most amazing outlet for me to explore my masculinity, to understand teamwork, to understand, to push the boundaries within a very close knit club. Coming from a new town in Scotland, a place called East Kilbride, at the time I had about 50, 60,000 people. The rugby club was, it was, there was probably about 100 players there. You knew all of them. You were going to training every week. You were going to games every week. And it was 16, 17-year-olds like me playing alongside 40 and 50-year-olds as well. And they were the kind of ones who instilled discipline and things like that into you and made you know what the social boundaries were. Because I remember Scotland were playing someone, it was on the big screen in the rugby club, and there would have been about 100, 200 people. It was probably England, let's be brutal about it, right? And I remember that the referee had made a bad decision, and I must have been 16 or 17, and was allowed a pint at the rugby club, and I swore quite loudly, called the referee an effing whatever. To the big screen, and I remember half of the guys in the club just turned around, looked at me, and went, "Button it, this isn't football." And that to me, that was a big, oh right, okay, I understand this. Different vibe, different game. That was probably the first game that I was allowed to watch, surrounded by all the adults having alcohol with the adults. Yeah. So that was why it was like, right, this is what you've got to do to behave yourself and be accepted.
It's interesting. Mike Smashing McGrain makes a point that when he was a kid growing up in the 60s and 70s, his dad insisted he should be a man who does manly things. It's a generational thing. Just want to cut a quick shout out to Steve Ashcroft as well, saying hello. But it's interesting for me because I've always, I'm a big rugby fan. I watch football as well, but the difference in the two are just incredible. Where, footballers, you watch rugby players getting their head knocked off and they carry on playing. And it just seems to be much more of a disciplined code And I wonder if that affects people who play it and fans, if there's a different mindset.
So, yeah, it absolutely does. And the reason for that is that if you back chat to the referee in any way, shape, or form, and you don't refer to the referee as sir or ref, and you insinuate that they've made a bad call, unless you are the captain, then the referee will just instantly blow their whistle and give 10 metres against you. And you then have 14 other people on that field of play who are really annoyed with you, because particularly if it's one of the forwards and they've been working their backsides off in a scrum and then all of a sudden they realise they've lost 10 metres. That's for me where rugby is a different game. And I coach my boys' rugby team, the primary fives, 9-year-olds, and that's something that we are very, very strong on in the past 2 years. Is a lot of the kids were talking back to their dads who are also coaches, and they were going, "But Dad, he said this." So just instigating in the other coaches' kids and in the other kids around about that, no, we are not dad for the next 90 minutes. We are coach. Yeah. I'm Coach Alan. He's Coach Russell. He's Coach Adam. And if one of the other coaches says something, if the coach says jump, you say how high. If a referee during a match says that it's a bad tackle or whatever, you don't complain. You just accept the whistle and you play on. And from a really young age, I think it's really important that kids understand that.
Those boundaries. So at school then, what's your favourite subject?
Geography.
Wow. What's the geography section?
I don't really know. I just love knowing about things and places and how the landscape was formed. And we were probably in primary 3, and we had a competition. It wasn't an official competition. It was just between a group of us in the class. It was one of these, who can memorize all the flags of the world, and then who can memorize all the capital cities. And we'd like try and outdo each other by going, what's the capital city of Djibouti and things like that. And that was just, it just grew from that, I suppose.
Wow. So then A-levels, what subjects do you take?
Oh gosh, English, maths, modern studies, which you guys will know as politics, geography, French, chemistry, biology.
And then did you go off to university after school?
I became an architect. Not a lot of people in the comedy world know that, and whenever I say that, they go, "What?
Oh. What? Why architecture? What was it about that attracted you?"
Lego.
I was not expecting that answer. What's the link with architecture and Lego?
Well, you're designing things when you make Lego, aren't you? Right, got to remember, it's 1980s Lego. It's not 2022 Lego where you spend £105 and you get very detailed, precise little bits of plastic, which will only make Thor's hammer or only make the Millennium Falcon. Back in the 1980s, you got bricks, you got windows, you got trees, you got flowers, you got some tiny little wheels, and you made whatever you wanted to make. Right? You created building. Boom, 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 boom. You know, it was purely your imagination, right? That fueled Lego in the 1980s. And nowadays, Lego teaches kids how to follow instructions properly. That's about it. Right? My kids have got tons of Lego, but it's all in exactly the same way that it came a day after the box.
I see that. So where did you work as an architect?
I did a wee bit of it. I was the last year of teaching to get taught purely on drawing board, and the years after me get taught on computer and drawing board, and then a couple of years after that, pretty much computer only. So with architecture, you do 3 years in, then you do a year in practice, then you do 2 years in, then you do another year in practice. So I'd done a kind of crazy route between doing the first couple of years in Strathclyde and then went down to Manchester. And I discovered in about my 6th year of study, that the kids below me were much better trained than what I was, and I would have to do an extra couple of years in order to get the skills required to be able to challenge them at other jobs. And if I'd been a couple of years older, I would be getting that training in an architectural firm. If I was a couple of years younger, I'd be getting that training in the university. But I was just in this little bit, which was in the middle, and it didn't quite work for me. And by that time, I was promoting and DJing in Manchester, and then got involved in comedy. And I looked at the money that I was making from doing a couple of nights DJing and a couple of nights of comedy compared to
what made you do the comedy? How did that come back?
Do you remember Scruffy Murphy's in Manchester that Toby Haydock ran way back? So it was the original Murphy's Malarkey, which was a wee pub, a wee side pub at the side of a bigger pub called the Queen of Hearts in Fallowfield, in the centre of student district of Manchester. And so it was every Tuesday night, and it was £1 to get in, but it wasn't £1 per person. It was 50 pence per person, and you paid £1 per couple. They didn't want to have 50p's to give people, so they just took £1. And so that was a Tuesday night, and other nights of the week, me and my pals, we were either DJing or studying architecture or going out and doing working behind the bar in Generation X in Manto in the Hacienda. And Scruffy's became the Tuesday night. You know, you spend less than a fiver and you've had 3 pints of beer. You've seen Peter Kay and Johnny Vegas. Anyway, that was a thing that we started doing week after week after week. And like Lee Martin was another person who kept on going week after week. And Lee now runs Gag Reflex and is involved in Britain's Got Talent and all that behind the scenes. Anyway, we started going then, and one night, it was January in 1999. I was a little bit too drunk. I was in on my own. I'm supposed to have been going to meet up with my brother, who was in the city centre of Manchester that night, but it was Eid, and the whole of Rusholme was chock-a-block with all the Muslims in their cars celebrating Eid, waving their flags, beeping their horns, just couldn't get in. So I just went to the comedy on my own, got a bit too drunk, and Toby Haydock said it's at the end of the night, as he was wrapping up, he went, "It's Burns night next week. Alan, you come in and you do 5 minutes, or you never get back in this club ever again."
Wow.
And word spread like wildfire through university, so I had to go and do it, and I went and I did it, and I died the most spectacular death, but I got one laugh, and that laugh was the biggest rush I'd ever had in my life. And I understand what heroin addicts must be like, because if that, as a comic, you're chasing that first endorphin rush that you get from that first laugh that you get in a club, and that's how I get into it.
And then, so you went your first gig. You went and died on your hole. What made you go up for the second gig?
Alcohol. I bumped into Toby. So my second gig was actually like 3 weeks later. I did Agraman's Buzz Club, and Adam Hills was headlining, and Jason Manford was behind the bar. This just guy. I mean, he was just Jason behind the bar. So did that, and actually I did all right, but Studies and that got in the way, and it was around about the May that I bumped into Toby in the street, and he had Peter Kay on a week later or 2 weeks later, and he just said to me, "Do you want a spot?" And I went, "Yeah," and so I went and did it, and yeah, I was very, very nervous, and yeah, I got drunk again. And Peter just spent half of his set slagging me off for being drunk, which is totally fair enough, right? Because I was being a dick. And that was probably the last time that I went on stage drunk.
Yeah.
When I'm meant to be on stage trying to impress people. There's been times I've gone on stage drunk when I've been drunk and not supposed to be on stage, right? But there's, I don't go out and get drunk anymore. And it was just like, I realized that if I wanted to do this, I had to be the sharpest brain in the room. And when you've had a beer, you're not.
Well, it's interesting. You see it all the time now, I guess, as a promoter, where lads will have a drink before they go on stage and not realise the effect it has on their speed, their responses, their delivery. And
it's not even when you do it. It's not even when you have a beer the night of a gig. It's so I run a big operation in Australia for their Fringe season every year, and we're out there for 3 months. We do 5 weeks in Perth, 5 weeks in Adelaide, and then a month in Melbourne. And I take around about 18 really good British acts and Irish acts out with us, and they work their backsides off. And I have to remind them all, look, this is a marathon that we're doing here. You will be taking 2 days a week off. You will be I don't really care what you do most of the time, so long as on a Friday and a Saturday and a Sunday, when you've got 5 gigs a night to do for me, you're in your fine form. If you want to go out and have a beer, do it on a Monday night, do it on a Tuesday night. But there's been a couple of occasions when a couple of acts on a Thursday have gone out, and let's say they've partaken in some chemical substances, and then when it comes to Friday, they've not got the spark, they've not got the energy, because they're still hungover / come down from whatever it was they did the night before. And that's the sad thing, that a lot of people, not a lot, that there is a large minority of comics who don't appreciate, is that for the public going to our shows, they've spent a lot of money. They've spent a lot of money, not in the tickets, but in organising a babysitter, right? Yeah. Getting the taxi, going for dinner, right? It's a big thing for them. And if they have got a comic who's a wee bit, then they have every right to feel disappointed. I mean, you would be disappointed if you supported a certain football team and your star player had gone out the night before the game and didn't play their best the next day. Well, that's exactly the same as when you make comics.
I've said it so many times where you've gone to people, have your beer after the gig, but it's that whole thing about the rock and roll lifestyle, is it? The glamour of it. So what happened then? What made you decide to cross over from being an act to being a promoter?
I was told very early on, in order to improve, the best thing that I should do is compare and run my own gig. And I still 100% tell every single new act, compare and run your own gig, because then you will learn how difficult it is. And I had years and years of DJing and knowledge of sound systems and connections in various bars and clubs throughout Manchester and the Northwest. And they just started going to me, "Oh, I hear you did that comedy thing. Do you want to do a comedy thing here?" And that's how it started. It was there's things you get wrong, but there's also things that you can get very, very easily right. And the marketing was the one thing. Do you know Sasha Lord, who's the nighttime advisor for Manchester? No, right. So he's Andy Burnham's right hand man when it comes to all things Manchester and entertainment. He runs things like Park Life, the Warehouse. I can't mind what it's called. The depot beside Piccadilly train station, which is the old post office mailing train sorting section. And he's like a massive promoter, and I learned a lot from him at working at Paradise Factory, which is where the old New Order offices were, because he was running the Monday nights in there and just learning how to PR and how to market and get students to go to things. That was where I learned my trades, basically, and how to sell and how to make people want to go to events.
So what's the secret? Is it about good acts, or is it about a good venue? Do people come to see who's on, or do they come they know it's going to be a good night? Consistency.
It's all about consistency, it's people knowing that if they go there, if there's going to be a compare in 3 acts, they know that at least 2 out of the 3 acts are going to be very good, right? They know that they're going to have a good night. Word of mouth is your greatest marketing tool. It doesn't matter how much money you spend on adverts and things like that. Your best advert is your last show. Your best advert is someone going away and saying, "Oh, we went to the comedy club at Rotunda and it was great." Your worst advert is someone going and having a bad time.
Yeah, I see that. If I could just welcome people who've just tuned into this. You're listening to me, John Ryan, on Reading the Signs with Alan Anderrson, promoter, performer, whiskey aficionado. Do listen in every day, 24/7, mensradiostation.com. We've got great shows, great guests. So I wanted to ask Alan about then when you took that first plunge into promoting comedy. Did you stop doing comedy straight away, or did you have the 2 run in parallel?
Oh no, I still do the 2 in parallel. I think I'm not a joke teller. I'm not a storyteller. I'm just a fly by night compere. I like going out and just bouncing off the crowd, and I like keeping my hand in. I like to make sure that at least once a month I'm in one of my clubs doing a gig, because that way I understand what it is the comics are experiencing in that room and what comics would work well in that room, what the staff are doing right, what the staff are doing wrong. So I still do it, nowhere near as often as I used to, but I still do it.
Then, what do you think has been a change in the nature of comics over the last few years? Are they getting softer? Are they getting worse? Is there more professionalism?
I think I'm going to talk about the comedy scene in general, right? And I'm going to compare it to dance music of the early 1990s and the rave scene. So in 88, 89, 90, into 91, we went to raves. We went to big outdoor raves. We went to Castle Howard, whatever it may be. And you went and you would hear all sorts of music. You would hear Balearic beats. You would hear piano house music. You would hear Hoover music. People would be dressed in bucket hats, looking like a Stone Roses tribute act, smiley face t-shirts, all tie-dye, the whole thing. And then 1991, 92, Renaissance opened up in Nottingham, Ministry of Sound opened up in London, Cream started doing their thing, and then it became about what you wear, and the music was genreized. So we got poppy house music, we got deep house music, we got hardcore. And you went to a jungle night, or you went to a hardcore night, or you went to a piano night, and that has become the way that the house music scene has developed and maintained itself over the past 30 years. And that's what's happened in comedy, as far as I can see. And that the 80s and the 90s, the 80s, you had the alternative scene, as they refer to it. You had the Dangerous Brothers with Rick and Aid, going through to Mark Thomas and Joe Brandt, and you get all these different sorts of comics on a bill in a quite small a small pool of clubs as there was. But over the past few years, you then got the corporatization of it with jonglers, and there was very much two circuits going on there, and you tried to do either the jonglers club comic, chicken in a basket, easy put downs, that kind of thing, or you tried to become someone who would get critical acclaim at the Edinburgh Fringe, and then go on to Radio 4, that kind of thing. But what's happened in the past 4 or 5 years is that it's become incredibly fragmented, because people can now create their own audiences through the internet, right? You can say, right, I am going to do surreal comedy, I am going to do sketch comedy, I am going to do political comedy, and you can go out there and you can find your own audience wherever you want on the internet, and they will be loyal to you. So you're not going round entertaining Janet from accounts, who's brought six of the partners in with her, or the Christmas or whatever it is, where you've got to appeal to everybody in the room. Nowadays, people are like, well, this is what I'm doing, and you either come because you like me, or you go somewhere else. And that's the way that I see it. It's became the genres of house music, but in its own comedy form.
I see that. I've always liked the kind of silly comics. Like, I can't do it. So, like Tom Stade or Seymour Mace, that kind of, like, their brains are just wired different. Raymond Mears, it's that kind of, the brain just kind of goes off in a different direction.
Hold on a minute. You've just put Tom Stade and Raymond Mears in the same box as Seymour Mace.
Yeah. Because
whatever, John. Whatever.
Because I've spent time with Tom and with Raymond, I know that their brains, they look out a window and what they see is different to what I see. Raymond's much more accessible for me, but it's still that kind of stream of conscience. You go, where on earth is this going?
Okay.
And I like that, the fact that there's not, they don't go, here's your feed line, here's your punchline. Some stage, some of his material, it just meanders on for about 5 minutes and then bam. And then Seymour Mace, I just think he's one of the most gifted comics in the country, because his brain just, where did you get that idea from? What on earth? I've been looking at the same thing.
However, see with all three of them, I'm going to pull the word consistency back out.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's right.
Right. And the three of them, when they are on form, are absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
But they're not consistent.
No, that's right. And it's that's
and as a booker, that's what you need when, like, with my clubs. They are the kind of places that you get a people go for the comedy. They don't go for a specific act, and that's why you need consistency.
Yeah. And it always fascinated me, especially with your gig in Glasgow during the festival, where you get festival acts who come over from Edinburgh and try to do 20 minutes, and they've been used to doing an hour of like whimsy or whatever. And you could see the good guys who could just snap back to it. It's like rugby. It's like sevens versus the full game. And it's just different practices, aren't they?
That's a great analogy. Sevens versus the full 15, because the right in Edinburgh you are still playing to 80% Scottish people, but in Glasgow, when during the month of August, when you come across to Glasgow and you do the Rotunda gig, you're playing to 80% Scottish people still who really, really don't want anything to do with the Edinburgh Fringe, right?
Yeah.
They just want laughter, right? And the vast majority of people in Edinburgh, they actually don't want to go to all these surrealist, highbrow, arty-farty comics who are at the 45th minute, they're going to talk about how their hamster died when they were 3 years old, blah, blah, blah. Here's the soapy bit. They just want an hour of laughs, right?
Yeah.
And when you look at the acts, the vast majority of the acts who get nominated or get the 5-star reviews or whatever it is because they've done some incredible bit of artistic comedic work, they're in 50-seater rooms, right? And in 2 weekends, I'll play to more people than they play to in an entire month, and you're just like, what's the point?
Because it's a different sport. Do you think that the comedy now then is it smarter now that we've got away from that chicken in the basket kind of model? Our audiences, do they want more for their money?
No, they just want to laugh.
That's interesting.
They just want to laugh, right? Audiences appreciate when there is something which is funny, even if it's wrong, to your typical, I hate that I'm going to say this, your typical Guardian reader, right? Mm-hmm. And most folk who go to comedy clubs are not they're not the aristocracy, right? They're not a comedy club night out isn't an upper middle class night out like going to the Bally or going to Glenbourne or something like that is, right? It's a very much middle class, working class night out. People go to escape their problems, to get some laughter endorphins in them for a couple of hours, have an all right meal, have some drink, go up the road and celebrate the anniversary or the birthday or whatever it is, right? And it's a very easy night out, right? It's the next step up from the cinema, but going to a theatre, that's actually a wee bit too. That's a bit too much.
Too far. So you talk about the audience, what the audience wants, and I kind of get that. What about the acts? And it's a great question. Big Steve Troop comes along every week. He's great. Do you feel you've got any responsibility for your act's mental well-being? Do you think that what they're going through, is that your business?
Wow. During the 3 months that we're out in Australia, 100%, I am responsible for the act's mental well-being, and I make it I make a point of grabbing an act when I see they're down or something like that, and I'll just turn up at their door with a car, say on a Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'll just go, we're going for a drive. And I just take them out into the outback or into the bush or whatever, and we go and find a vineyard, and we'll have a really nice meal, and we'll just getting away from the bubble that is Fringe, and just because for a lot of them, they're either on the younger side or they might be missing their family. They might be a dad with a couple of kids, or as is frequently the case, it's a comic who is, say, a year into a divorce, and they're a good comic, but they've just, for the past 10 years, they've not been able to do something like this, but they just needed to get away, and so they go and do it. So yeah, I certainly for the Australia run, I do make it. I do make a point of making sure that everyone gets 2 days a week off to reset, and they're just not allowed to do any gigs at all. They're not allowed to go into comedy clubs. I tell them, go and see some physical dance. Go to go to the beach, disappear, whatever it is. But for the rest of the time, with regards to the 5 clubs that I run in the UK, is it my responsibility to check in on their mental well-being? I've never really thought about it, to be honest with you.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I remember doing a gig of yours once, and ACT, it didn't go very well from at all. And they came off, and they were literally in pieces. And then what they meant to do is get in their car and drive off. Now, a couple of us older acts said, look, just it happens, don't worry about it, get over it, it's not a problem. You'll be back next week and on stage. But it's such a traumatic experience for people still to have a tough gig. And there's no one there. Or is it like, come on, toughen up, get on stage, get on with it? Is it like a game?
Yes, right. I'm very much a tough love kind of person, right? And so far as, see, for acts who haven't had a good one, maybe comedy isn't for them, right? There's so many acts who it's just, right. When you play American football, you play really well in high school, but you don't get a scholarship to go to college, or you play really well in college, but you don't do well enough to get into the NFL draft. There's no cut-off system like that in comedy, and I so wish there was. I wish when people had got to X amount of time, if they hadn't made the mark, they were just told, beat it. Yeah. There's someone better coming along nipping at your feet. Right? And sad. I think it's a sad thing because there are acts out there who have been going for 20 years and they've never made it, but they think they have, and they scrape a mediocre existence out of comedy, and they're still clinging to, but all they've done is they've turned themselves into alcoholics, right? And it's widespread, the amount of dead behind the eyes, haven't made it, never will make it folk who, they really just need someone to sit them down and say, all the bookers had a meeting, we're never going to book you.
Yeah, I could see that. I've seen people that I've known for years, and if it's a hobby, do it as a hobby. But if you want to make a living at it, it's hard. You've got to be consistent. And I started doing the cruise ships in 2003, and the amount of times I've seen lads come from the circuit onto a ship, and it's a different game. Different game again. It's rugby league, rugby union. It's different. And you say to them, this is a basic rule. You do 3 30-minute shows. The first 30 has got to be your strongest. Whereas on the circuit, you build up to your strongest material at the end. On the ship, your strongest material has to come first, because you've only got that first 3 or 4 minutes to make that impression. And they've seen guys nailing it the previous night or previous week. You're in a theatre with like 1,100, 1,200 people. You just don't get time to develop that skill on the circuit. So I think expectation management for me would be an essential part of a comedian's armour.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good way of putting it. Yeah.
And it is that. So then you put sometimes you've got to put your arm around someone. You've got to you want to say, look, it's not for you, mate. Go and get yourself a proper job. How then does that transfer into your daily life? What is it that Alan Anderrson does that gets him up in the morning and keeps him going, and apart from the mischief?
What do you mean apart from the mischief? Right, hold on. Right, explain what you mean apart from the mischief.
So, of all the people I know, how many times do I randomly send you a message with just a clap or a smile or what? It's that goading, teasing. Like, I'm still here. You're like, I'm over here. In case you're wondering, I'm still here.
Right, I think you better, for those who don't know, I think you better explain the topicality of that. What's happened recently?
There are things like, for example, you're a useless waste of space who runs dead-end gigs, and then some of the people who would say this useless waste of space is having more successful than them. His gigs are more successful than theirs, attracting bigger and better venues, to the extent that you ended up buying, and I know you bought it for good reasons, but also for mischief, buying the backdrop from the stand, for example. Absolute stroke of genius. The contempt that you've been shown over the years by some of these people, And to know that you can just go in there and in East End of London just go, gosh, there's my money, I'll have that. That kind of mischief, I think that's kind of what keeps you going, keeps driving you on.
Aye, I think the bit right. So for people who don't understand, so the Stand Comedy Club is got a venue in Glasgow, one in Edinburgh, one in Newcastle, and we've got Rotunda, and I've been running gigs in Glasgow for 20 odd years, and there's a bit of a kind of Rangers versus Celtic kind of vibe going on between the two, and they came up with some really wet behind the ears reason to get rid of their cowboy pointing a gun at their head backdrop, which is iconic that they've had for 25 years. And it was just it was cancel culture gone too far, saying that it triggered people. It's a cartoon. And we decided, and they were selling it off for a charity, for a kids charity, and we decided that because it was for a charity that we would buy it, and in an auction, I honestly never expected to win, but did have significantly more money to win it with than what we bid, and it's a wee bit like in the mid-90s, one of Scotland's greatest footballers, a man called Maurice Johnson, was coming back to Scotland to play after having been in Europe, and he was one of our. It was him and Ali McCoist who played up front for Scotland, basically, and he went to Celtic Football Club, the club of his youth, then he was about to sign the papers. He'd done the medical and all that, and he was going in the next day to sign the papers to be the biggest signing in Scottish history, and to be the messiah for Celtic. Coming home. And then overnight, Graham Souness stopped off at his house and got him to sign for Rangers instead. And the next day, before the Celtic press conference, there was Souness with Johnson stood on the pitch at Ibrox with Johnson's name on the back of a Rangers top. And that's exactly what happened 2 weeks ago, was me just walking in to their club for hits and giggles, and buying it,
owned it, and had it, and then
now we've put it up in our club, just because it's funny. So yeah, I do these kind of naughty. I love goading bears. I love. Okay, it's kind of trolling, right? But we work in the comedy industry where you're supposed to have fun, you're supposed to play pranks, right? And it's run by a literal politician in Scotland, right? Where is the fun? That it's gone.
It's just that mischief. It's that anarchic mischief. And unfortunately, what you've done is that you've managed to upset the apple cart by establishing yourself as a promoter with great venues that everyone wants to play. And what people who don't do comedy don't realise is that people can slag you off, but they need work from you. And you will give them work, despite the fact that you know they slag you off. Just, again, because they're taking money from the guy that they run down.
There is people who I really, really like as people, who I consider to be good friends with, who I won't put on a stage because they're just not consistently funny enough. And there's other people who I absolutely cannot stand. I think that the way they live their lives is terrible. I think the way they treat other people is terrible. And the sad thing is, you put them on a stage and they make people laugh. Now, there are boundaries, right? If you do a certain thing, if you behave in a criminal or violent or sexually untoward manner, then no way you're getting anywhere near my stage. But if you're just an obnoxious drunk pain in the backside or whatever it may be, but you're still funny and you don't offend my crowds, then you'll get on my stage. But if you don't shower, no, you're no.
And you will tell them.
100%.
This last hour, honestly, it's just flown past. Absolutely flown past. So you just to let people know where your gigs are.
So we run the comedy cabaret clubs, and they are from north to south. They are in Aberdeen, Glasgow, Leeds, Bristol, and opening up in 2 weeks' time, Cardiff. So it's thecomedycabaret.club.
Brilliant. And I'm going to leave Big Steve with the last word on this. Big Steve is a straight man after your own heart. This guy is so refreshing. You can have that almost as the refreshing Alan Anderson.
Oh, God, no. In what, right? Okay, enlighten me. In what way am I refreshing compared to what other guests? In what way? I'm intrigued.
You talk straight. You just telling it straight. You talked about your father taking his own life. You talked about why you bought the backdrop from Stan. You talked about the fact that you were the first straight man to work in a gay nightclub, and it's just that openness. It's almost like you go, there you go. What you see is what you get, and you don't get that from people.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's what we want. But mate, always a pleasure. Hopefully we'll speak soon. In the meantime, do take care, mate, and just keep doing what you're doing. And every now and again, I'm just going to send you a message at 1 a.m. going, mate.
Cool. And next time you come up and see your absolutely rubbish football club in my city, said as someone who hates football, I hate both sides of them, right?
I know you.
Yeah. So give us a shout, or better still, I'll see you at Murrayfield.
Definitely, mate. All right, you take care, mate. Speak soon. All the best.
Take care. Bye.
That was Alan Anderson, a very, very refreshing guy. Not everyone's cup of tea, but then he doesn't try to be. But I think he's very consistent, which is a word that featured very prominently in what he was saying. For comedy to work, you don't always have to be the funniest, the best, the most outrageous. You have to be consistent. And in life, it's all about consistency as well, isn't it? Because what confuses and unsettles people is when you kind of suddenly change who you are and what you are. Now, we've had a good little chat, just two middle-aged men talking about life, and that's great. But for a lot of people, they don't have people they can talk to. If ever you find that you want someone to speak to or you need some help, go to Mind, the mental health charity, because no one has to face a mental health problem alone. Just type in MIND into the internet. Time to Change is another great resource. They want to end mental health discrimination. As you know, everywhere you go, we're not clinicians, we're not practitioners, we're not mental health experts, we're just guys who are getting through life. And maybe what works for me or what works for Alan might work for you. As he said, he recognizes when acts need a bit of an arm on their shoulder, and he'll turn up at their accommodation and just take them out for a meal. He's generous. He's not going to try and screw people over, but he's not a fool, because obviously he wants you to be able to do your job, do it well, and do it consistently. And in life, that's all we want, isn't it? Someone to be honest with us, someone to be straight. How many times have you heard people say, just tell me the truth? But, in the words of Jack Nicholson, you can't handle the truth. So what we want maybe is just a little bit more support and a little bit more kindness and care. And that's one of the things that I've had whilst I've been up here in Manchester for Pride weekend, is that I've met so many nice people, good people who aren't hostile, angry, and ready to rip your face off. But not everybody's got that. If you do get a chance to listen into any of the other shows on the station, mensradiostation.com and womensradiostation.com, also Deluxe Radio, then do. 24/7, there is always someone here that will have a show that you can listen to that might help you, or maybe it won't. You know what? But you're not on your own. One of the things about people having a mental health problem is that they don't realise that there's help out there. When they can't find that help, that's for the rest of us, the allies, to step up and go, look, I've got your back. And just like Alan, put your hand on someone's shoulder and say to them, you're not going to get through this without some support, and I will give you that support. If you know anyone who's struggling or anyone who needs help, give them a shout, knock on their door, send them a text. They won't always respond immediately, but they will get better invariably. And when they do, they'll appreciate that during their toughest time, you were there for them. No one has to face anything on their own at the moment. So if you do know someone struggling, just reach out. Take care, and we'll see you next week.
Well, that's the end of another great show. What a brilliant guest that was. I could have spoken to them for hours. Don't forget to check out all the other brilliant shows on the mensradiostation.com website, as well as womensradiostation.com as well. Do subscribe to all of our media outlets, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all those things, but tell your friends. Big thank you to Lost Boys UK, who have provided this fantastic music for the show. Check out my website, happytohelpyou.com. We'll be back next week. Really do take care of yourself, and remember, you're not on your own. You're part of the mensradiostation.com family. Take care. Good night.